Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's start a whole new series here. This one based again on some of your newer suggestions. As promised, I'm going to do maybe somewhere around 5 to 10 videos this go around. So please keep those suggestions coming, and I'll start taking a look at some of the back ones as well to see if there's anything interesting I might have missed. This first entry though has to do with a monster that comes from our northern friends up there in Canada. And what's fascinating about this creature is the fact that it may have been actually created by some Canadians themselves, just inadvertently through the passage of time. And then also there's another trait as far as it being linked to some Native American folklore or mythology. So I'll talk about that more in a minute here. But you're looking at this monster now, has a very unique name too. It's known as the Toronto Tunnel Monster. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating info associated with this creature found there in Canada. So what is this Toronto Tunnel Monster? Well, there haven't been too many sightings associated with it, but the ones that people have seen, it's created quite an impression, even to the point that it was reported in a major newspaper there, and I'll highlight more on that here in a minute. As far as though its physical characteristics, let's start off with that first. If you wanted to sum it up and compare it to another close creature, the closest analogy, in other words, it's basically something like a monkey. It's the size of a monkey, it's hairy like a monkey, it has the long, thin appendages just like a monkey. Doesn't seem to have a tail though, but the biggest difference though is this tunnel monster, this Toronto Tunnel Monster has these very large red eyes, or it could be described in some cases as being orange eyes. And the reason for it is because of where it dwells. You have to go again to Toronto, but underneath it to the many culverts, sewers, waterways, riverbanks, whatever is down there deep below the city that this creature makes its habitat. That could be why essentially it has those very large eyes, because it's used to using them so much in the darkness there. And that ties into what I was mentioning earlier as far as Canadians inadvertently may have created this creature. Here's how it goes. Apparently, way back when, like 12,000 plus years or so ago, there was a gigantic glacier in that area that slowly moved and dissipated, and as it did so, it created many rivers and waterways and streams throughout that area. Well, as the passage of time occurred and people started to move there, especially like in the 1800s, 1900s, a lot of those waterways were essentially canceled out. Either they had bridges built over them, or they were just stopped or moved or diverted, or they were buried over. And that was to create a lot of space to be able to have, I guess, people living there, to have homes, to have other land there as well. Now, the waterways didn't necessarily disappear. They just disappeared on the top side, but not on the bottom side. So whatever was down there, because whatever those streams that were on the top side were that were diverted or stopped, they still existed underneath that part of the city, but they were just plugged up, for lack of a better term. And so whatever was down there essentially became stuck down there thereafter. And the way this ties into the Native American mythology is that apparently there's this creature that's known as the May-May-Gwesi, and it's a water spirit of sorts that used to inhabit a lot of those rivers there. Apparently this was a creature that was half spirit, half monster, and it would create itself or make itself appearable to children in particular. And it was more on the lines of a trickster of sorts. It was someone that, as long as you paid it proper respect, then it did the right thing. Otherwise, if you didn't, then it was known to steal things, or was known to come about and tip over canoes, that kind of stuff. And so the idea was whatever is down there that was buried, at least according to Native American mythology, may have been part of this Toronto Tunnel Monster. Interesting, though, how these two theories pretty much intersect one another. It could be that this is just a whole new cryptid on its own, and that just happened to be buried there, or it could be that the creation of these new bridges, whatever else was being done to plug these rivers, inadvertently brought out the monster from the bottom as well, because all of a sudden their own livelihood, whatever that is, like in terms of water and anything else surrounding it, was now being changed. And so by doing this, they had to come out, and then that's where people started started encountering them. Or it could be still tied into that Native American mythology where people now moved there onto the land that was dwelled by these water spirits. And so that's where these creatures were also rustled out. So interesting, no, all these fascinating theories associated with it. But otherwise, once this happened, people started to live there. That's where, again, some of the encounters occurred. And in fact, one of them that stood out was again listed within one of the newspapers there. It was an encounter that occurred in August of 1978. It was by a gentleman who only revealed his first name as Ernest. He was 51 years old at the time. The reason why he only revealed his first name is because after his encounter with this Toronto Tunnel monster, he didn't want everyone to think that he was a drunk, crazy person, so he kept it to himself. But if what for the chance that he's told it to one friend who then told it to another Toronto area newspaper journalist, and then that's where they in turn got a hold of Ernest and tried to get him to reveal it, then that's when essentially they got him to tell what occurred. And here's his version of what he stated. So apparently he lived near an area there in Toronto at a place called the Parliament Saint Apartment. He and his wife would have these kittens, and these kittens were just playing about when one day one of them disappeared. And so he decided to search for it. And when he went over, he went to a location that he considered a quote unquote dark cave. And in fact, you're looking at a picture of it here. This was something, I don't know if this was a cave created through the I don't know, the bridge, like the bridges being built from scratch, or if there was something else that occurred just naturally. Who knows? Someone might have to point that out to me as far as how this entrance, if you call it that, was existing in the first place. But still, he went over there and he thought to himself, maybe that's where something was there. And in fact, it ties into another thing that he mentioned. Other words, he would say that in the past, passing by that location, he would hear strange sounds. Like he would hear almost the sounds of like animals in pain. They didn't think much of it afterward, of course, until he had his own encounter here that I'm about to describe. So he went inside that particular tunnel, and as he went, so it was almost, and when I was reading, it was almost straight like out of a movie. He crawled into it, went about 10 feet inwards. Very, very quickly, it got to be a very, very dark place in there because of the light only coming from one source and then only pointing towards a certain angle. And then that's when, lo and behold, he saw a creature of unknown origin straight in front of him. In fact, he described it, and this was his direct quote, as long and thin, almost like a monkey, 3 feet long, large teeth, weighing about maybe 30 pounds, with slate gray fur. And then the eyes were, like I mentioned earlier, are the biggest standout things, because he stated they were orange and red, and they had this almost slanted look on it. But the next thing even shocked him even more, because he stated that, and his correct quote was, he'll never forget it, he said this thing in a hissing voice told him, go away, and then it ran off deep into the long tunnel, back office, back entrance, whatever that is, like in terms of deep into the darkness. And that's when he just ran out. Like he just completely got out of there, shaking with fear, is how his direct quote was. He went to his wife, told him about it, and she in turn backed him up when she was telling the newspaper about his experience too, because she said he was absolutely terrified, and he's one that doesn't scare easily. She also told the newspaper that no, he wasn't drunk at the time because he didn't drink that particular day. And then even the newspaper checked out some of the other people that this guy Ernest knew, like relatives and neighborhood acquaintances, and they too backed him up by stating that he would not make something like this up. And so this newspaper went to that cave entrance, and then that's where they took a picture of it. And then they even interviewed some of the other people that worked there, like some of the people that were sewage employees. And while they didn't necessarily like make fun of Ernest's claim, they did state that people who work there realized that there's a whole other world. That was the correct quote, a whole different world down there, like in terms of it being much larger than people think, and that these sewers just go across and crisscross and go into these streams and waterways that just create a whole new universe, something else down there that people have no idea exists. And so to them, they find it plausible that they don't know exactly what he saw down there, but still to them they would never go in there alone, because they believe that something could be down there because of the large system, whatever that is, that happens to live down there. Interestingly enough, though, the newspapers and the others did find actually the corpse of, or the bones of, a kitten down there as well, which kind of corroborates his story, Ernest's story, about finding or trying to go down there to find his kitten, and then realizing that all those animal sounds I was mentioning earlier, animals in pain, could be tied to whatever was down there. And so, thus, the first major encounter with the Toronto Tunnel Monster was listed, and it even got newspaper notices there too. But ever since then, there have been continued encounters with this creature, whatever it is, and to this day, people still are kind of looking out for this Toronto Tunnel Monster to see if it has anything else. But who knows, considering how large that sewer system is down there, and then how much effort it would take to try to traverse all of it and then find it, especially considering that that's their world. If they're truly down there, you would have to have, batteries, scores of batteries. You would have to have infrared. You would have to have some kind of echolocation, something to help you to your advantage. And then that's their universe down there. They could easily just move about, and you would never know that they were right in front of you, like, let's say, moments before, and then there they are now gone. So it would take so much effort to find them because of how good they're able to hide themselves. But what are these Toronto Tunnel Monsters? Let me know, guys, what you think. Anyone else have any theories? Are they actual water spirits? Again, according to Native American mythology, are they their own creature, some kind of monster that was created by all this settling, all this changing of the riverways, everything that changed their home world, and then in turn caused them to be coming upward? Let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear what your theories are. Anyone that lives down there, by the way, in the Toronto area, that knows more info on this, maybe on a more personal side, I'd love to hear that experience too. So, all right, everyone. Thanks again as always, and I'll be doing some more videos here soon. Take care, everyone.